everyone here is equal, and we don't care about your past. You can work off your pretty much work your time off for whatever crime you committed. So you can work in the mines. Hello and welcome to another Dead Pixel. I'm your host today, Joe, and with me today, the man who always bets on both teams for any sporting event, Nick. How you doing, Nick?
Doing pretty good. Um, it's funny, but usually I break even. I know you wouldn't think that, but usually I break even overall.
Yeah, I can't remember which movie it was. I think it was an like an Antonio Banderas and Woody Harrelson film where they're boxers, and the whole like at the very end they're like, "Yeah, like I got this great plan," and it's like you just gotta bet, you just gotta bet a big chunk of money on black, and then they roulette. It's like, "Yeah, and it's red." Well, don't worry, you double up now, so you go double the amount on black. It's like, and then it's like, "And it's red." Like they just and that kind of
Jeez.
fades like as they're pretty much burning all their money trying to bet on one color as they're doubling up. So
Dude, roulette
yeah,
is like the most like I just have no idea why anybody would want to play roulette. There's some strategy to it, but it's just insane. Now what I have heard is everybody is like winning like a bunch of money um or a little bit of money or whatever at a casino, and then like as you're about to leave, just throw out all of your winnings on one color, like just throw it all on black, and then if you win, then you're like all right, fucking freaking awesome, and you walk out with like double or whatever or way more. Uh, it's I don't know why people do that, but it's a thing.
well, it's one of those things that like if you go you go in being like, this is the money I can burn, and depending on how much time and how many drinks I get out of it, I'm pretty much just paying for my own entertainment at this point.
Yeah,
So if you can break even by the end of the night, you win, right? Because you've entertained yourself, you've had some drinks, and you're good. So yeah, I've had friends who do that, be like, won a couple hundred, and then just go ahead and do the last minute gamble, and like, yeah, well, either I go leaving, winning big, or I literally come out with what I came in. But it's
I
a
had a good
fun
time.
thrill.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's I mean, gambling is fun. It's like if you kind of know what you're doing a little bit, or you're sort of good at blackjack or poker or something, it can be a lot of fun. You can actually, I would say, if you go play blackjack, you want to play with other people as a team against the dealer. It's a weird sort of
Make it
concept.
very obvious that you're
It's it's
just
it's not counting cards. It's just like if let's say that there are four of you at the table, one of you is always going to lose, or you're going to lose most of the time, but the others can win. So you won't like break the casino, but I've been at tables where there was three of us, and this one guy, he was like, can you just he was somebody I knew, it wasn't just a stranger, but he was like, can you just do what I say? And I was like, sure. Like I've got like $100 out tonight. He was like, okay. And so I just started to do exactly what he told me to do, exactly when he told me to do it, and ended up winning $150 off of that table in like 30 minutes. And they won some money too. And I even had, and 150 was what I walked away with. I tipped the dealer a good bit as well. Though it's something that you can do, but you kind of got to know a little bit of what you're doing, and of course you're not going to win every time. But anyway, that's my short story about how to beat Vegas.
yeah, I just recommend just if you like to play poker or something like that, there's plenty of tournaments to go around. Some of them are pretty low cost entry, and if you can make a few rounds, like maybe you'll actually leave with some money, or at least you'll stretch that dollar farther, and you'll have more fun that way.
Yeah,
Uh, or
but
you can be like my buddy who just goes all in right out from the start and just be like, I don't know what happened, man.
there's a guy that I
I'm still in this tournament, so you go do something.
there's a guy I used to play poker with, and what he would do is whenever he was losing and he would get down to basically like his last hand, he would get his his two cards and he wouldn't look at them and he'd just bet all in. And sometimes and like one time he won and he won back pretty big. I think he still ended up losing, but it was funny to see him do that 3 or 4 times at different sessions. But there's some poker videos out there on YouTube, um, that if you watch them and you do what they say, like they're just very basic, like certain tips. If you just follow what they say to do, it will actually improve your poker game a ton from like being a layman and just having like a every once in a while poker game with some dudes that you know. You'll be surprised how little people actually know about poker, even people who play it fairly regularly. Um, it's pretty wild. So I can recommend that.
I have to recommend to gamble responsibly. So
Yeah, definitely. Maybe
don't follow
don't.
Nick's advice and just you don't make it a habit. I mean, he has his own issues, so just don't worry about it.
I'm a degenerate gambler.
I mean, it's a safe space. I said that a long time ago here. So,
No, it's
all
not.
right.
Go ahead. Go ahead. What do you got?
Just we all judge you, but we just don't say it.
Yeah, I know.
All right. I don't know, man. Anyways, how have things been going with you?
Well, remember how on the other podcast that we did, how I said I was going to start playing Hogwarts Legacy today?
Yep.
So I took a little bit longer look at my finances, and I decided that maybe I'll play it later. So anyway, I could probably afford it this month, but I was like, man, I don't really care about this game that much, and it's $70, and I have a lot of games from last year that are definitely better than this that I still need to play and beat. I mean, Xenoblade Chronicles being one, Elden Ring being another, freaking God of War. I'm at least halfway through that as well. And then there's a couple other like games that are on Game Pass that I should go and play. Tunic. I know you're gonna say Tunic. You never played Tunic. Why don't you play Tunic? But I
That's only because you quit like not even halfway through most of your games. That's the problem.
well, I'm always trying to play a new
You need to.
damn game for a little podcast that we tend to do every once in a while. I'd like to even play High on Life a little bit more, but that's probably never going to happen. So I was just kind of like looking at it, going like, but dang, this game is $70. I could do better by not buying it this month, and it'll still be here next month, and I've got these other freaking games to play. So
Yeah, you still haven't beaten Eastward either. I mean, you were so high on that one. Yeah,
you're trying to
I'll
goad
just
me into
I'll pour
beating
those
Eastward. That's what you're trying
sprinkle
to
your
do.
salt in your wounds. So that's all there is to it.
Yeah, you haven't. I mean, you go months without playing games at all, though. So you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, but I also have two little monsters to raise. I mean, that's a full-time game in
You
itself of
watch
them trying
plenty
to
of
murder
anime.
themselves.
You watch plenty of anime. You could play some
Yeah,
games.
anime is so easy to do though. That's something you can literally
Ch-
have playing on while you're in the
child,
kitchen.
child on your chest. You're just like watching anime.
No, see, I missed like those were good times, man. Like I used to be able to play games with having them in the like little bouncer chair, and so I would be using my foot to bounce the chair while I was playing on the computer. It actually worked really well. Um, it's like so long as you are a person who has like a can do the nervous knee twitch, where you're just sitting at a desk bouncing your knee up and down. It's pretty much that. But yeah, Hogwarts Legacy, man. I was looking forward to your opinion on that because that's people are either loving it or hating it. That seems to be the
Well, I mean, uh, I don't know. I'm sure there's some legitimate haters out there, and I'm sure there's some illegitimate people who like it or whatever. Um, but yeah, I will just put my we'll just I'll play it next month maybe, and then we can put my opinion behind the Patreon wall, and then you can go get that for
so
10.99 a month.
so that'll be for the forever from now listing there. But
Yeah.
all right. Yeah, on my end though, we got, unfortunately my kids are it's that's like kids are getting sick now, so the daycare is just a bunch of sniffing little monsters, and my work, everyone seems to be coughing or sneezing. So it's just like I'm lucky right now. I'm still okay, but I'm probably gonna bite the dust real soon. Um, so luckily I can make it through this podcast. I mean, you said you weren't feeling so hot either, so yeah,
Yeah, I woke up with a
hopefully you
cold
feel
this
better.
morning, so I'm supposed to go to a party this evening, and I didn't. I couldn't because I was just like I was on medicine, and I went to the store and got some party favors, and I came back to my apartment to put some extra stuff I got, and I was just like, no, I cannot do this. I could have powered through, but like I'm not gonna be any fun. I need to just go home and get some more sleep. So that's what I did.
Sleep's important, man. All right, so what do you got for us from the news front?
All right. I complained to you about this earlier in the week, and you had no sympathy for me. Zelda is going to be $70. Zelda Breath of the Kingdom
What?
Wilds or whatever. It's going to be $70. So why I'm mad about this is that
Tears of the Kingdom. That's the name of the new one.
Tears of the Breath of the Kingdom Wild. Um, why I'm mad about this is so so far the Switch games have been $60, and no standard package has been more than $60. But since it's Zelda and they know they can, they're charging $70. Now, Nintendo has said we take every game on a case by case basis. Bullshit. No, you don't. You don't take every game on a case by case basis. You're taking this game on a case by case basis because you want to charge $70. All right. So there's a lot of different things going on here. So Sony and Xbox have started charging $70 for their games. Sony, as annoying as it is to have to pay $70 now, they did it the best way possible. You have a new generation and you have games now $70 because we made it through all of these years with only charging you $60 from PS3 to PS4. You know, inflation's been happening, all that stuff, but we've stuck with $60, and now here we are, new generation. There's the cutoff point. Xbox did something similar. They kind of just like, well, I guess we'll go ahead and do it too. I think they should have done it with their new generation, but Switch is still the old generation, so they don't have that like that level of a new generation marker to be able to charge $70. So, and they're not charging $70 on their other games. Now, if they were like, hey, inflation, yo, times are hard, we're charging $70 now, I'd be like, well, that sucks. But if it's across the board, like I get it. But no, they're just doing it for Zelda because they know that everyone's going to buy their Zelda game. And yeah, it's bigger, and yeah, that's a good reason and stuff too. But it's just irritating. It's like you guys are just trying to gouge me because it's a Zelda game. But that's the way it is. I don't know. Maybe after I get into it and I'm like, hey, this game is really really huge and really really amazing. I can see now why they charged $70 for it. I'll be happy to eat crow if that time comes. But for now, it just feels like I'm being gouged.
Well, it was inevitability at this point. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm surprised they lasted this long. Honestly, when the other playing devil's advocate, I mean, it takes longer to make games. If if you wanted to follow the old work mentality of having crunch time, then yeah, games could come out quicker. But I mean, this game has been pushed back quite a bit. We both thought that it was going to come out last year. It didn't. Like I wasn't too surprised when it got pushed, but at the same time, it got pushed before. So it's just like, oh yeah, they really needed to come out, fall of 2022, but they actually pushed it back. So and you've seen the way they release DLC, not very well, not very profitable on their side. So they can't really fall back on that model. And I mean, w- what did they do for the last one? They did. You got that motorcycle, I think it was, and a few other small things. So it really wasn't that great of DLC.
Yeah, I
Not
heard the
really because I
DLC wasn't
pay
super great.
extra bills. Um, so yeah, it's just they can't do it. They can't really make this into a long term, long term goal like you would a Xbox or a PlayStation game where like, yeah, let's do a steady flow of DLC, and but if they did, people would start hating them on for them for that too, because like they can sell a bunch of different costumes for Link if they wanted to, and people would be gladly pay it. Like, what, you can make Link put Link into Samus armor? Sure. You can make Link look like Mario? Sure.
That's the
I
first thing I
mean,
thought of.
people would pay all that stupid stuff for like, yeah, let me cosplay Link as any Nintendo property character. Where's my Kirby glider, huh? It's just they would love to, like, but then people would be saying, "Oh, Nintendo's they're so evil because they're profiting off their blah blah blah." Like, there's no winning. So
Yeah,
for them to like, I will defend the fact that, like, well, this game is been in development for a very long time. I can totally see why they're bumping this one up, and at the same time, it's also, the system is at the end of its life cycle. I think it's been, what, 5 years now at least. Uh,
2017, so it's getting onto that sixth year. Yeah,
yeah, so it's just like they really need to start looking into the future for the next iteration, and it's just like, normally if the pandemic didn't happen, they would have had, you'd think they would have had some sort of mid bump, like the DSi to the DS, or like even a 3DS version, so they should be having some sort of new Switch, Pro, whatever, something, Switch 2, Switch whatever the hell they want to do with it, because they're terrible at naming stuff. So
yeah. I mean, the Switch is actually it's kind of a bad name, but also kind of a good name. But you're right. They are ever since the Super Nintendo, they've been pretty bad at naming anything. Yeah, I mean, it is going to be 18 gigabytes bigger than the original Breath of the Wild, so that's a considerable amount. That's pretty freaking huge. So maybe they're putting all their DLC ideas into this game, and they're not going to sell very much at all. And they're just going to make this a big fat game and just charge you. They're like, well, we know everyone's going to buy it, so we're going to make them go ahead and pay, $10 more for the DLC that they're not going to buy. We're just going to go ahead and jam it in there. I
well, you
get it.
also Switch has always had the Switch tax as well. People saying, if you wanted to buy a physical cart of something, you're always going to be paying more, in a lot of respect, compared to buying it digitally. And you also have the fact that, because it's more expensive to print things on carts. Depending on how big the game is, you'd have to have a bigger size cart. So, it naturally would end up costing more than like it would on any other platform. Discs are cheap. Granted, you have there's a lot of benefit to having a cart, but now you're still having to download patches and stuff. Still, it's not like it's the good old days as people pined for. So there's no real, like I said, it's just, I don't know, it sucks. Yeah, it's always nice to be able to pay less. But I feel like even a lot of Nintendo games are actually getting discounted more than they used to.
They are, yeah.
Um,
I think so.
so
Yeah,
it's
it's kind of a
couldn't
weird
wait.
thing. Like I wonder. I mean, this is probably going to be this Zelda is probably going to be the last Zelda before, hopefully, the last Zelda before a Switch 2 or whatever comes out. But I would think a Switch 2 would be on the way and by 2025. Um, and we'd probably hear about something in 2024 at the very least. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, you'd think you'd hear something relatively soon about at least hinting at the future, but at the same time, I
Well,
mean,
well, there's all those.
this will look great. This will look great on a Steam Deck. Just saying.
Yeah, yeah, and it's going to be there running 60 FPS 4K. Yeah, it's gonna be on that. Gosh, this is wild. It just makes you wonder why things are the way they are. But oh well. Anyway, so yeah, that's it for the Zelda thing. So other thing, two more things. Bobby Kotick, they're saying will probably be the CEO of Activision, Blizzard, of Activision, if the deal with Microsoft falls through. And he's and separately, but also kind of similar in the same vein story. Bobby Kotick himself is claiming that Sony is trying to sabotage the deal between Microsoft and Activision. Um, I don't know. I kind of think on that first part that like people reporting that he'll still be the CEO if the deal falls through. I think that that's probably true enough. But I think that they're touting that and putting it out there because they know that everybody hates Bobby Kotick, and so they're like saying, "Well, if you want this guy that you hate to be ousted, then don't stop the deal. Let the deal go through, and then he'll be ousted. But if you don't, then you're keeping this guy that you think is a creep in as CEO." But anyway, so that's kind of the scuttlebutt that's going on with that never-ending cycle of Microsoft Activision deal stuff talk going on.
All right, yeah. I mean, we'll see how this turns out, but it's let's see if they can keep the ball rolling and make them also the worst thing of this year as well.
Yeah, it's weird because it's like the UK and the EU and stuff are trying to block the deal from happening. I don't know how much the US cares about it. Doesn't seem like they're into blocking it as much. I don't know. Like I look at Sony and I'm like, look, they have all of Japan on lockdown with Nintendo, I guess, but they also have the United States and Europe pretty well in hand, whereas Xbox only has the United States and Europe, which is a lot, but nobody in Japan really buys anything to do with Xbox. Like they've never been able to break in there in
Japan's not an
significant
important
numbers.
enough market. That has been proven by Sony themselves. Sony has now officially recognized the West for things like their controller configuration. So yes, I mean you may not have Japan. That feels like it's. I think that's from a bygone era. Like, yeah, their market's so big and so important, but that's not the case. I mean,
Have
the
you
studios are,
ever
but
played Risk?
yes.
Right in this situation, Japan is Australia. If you've got Australia, you have this unbreakable foothold where it's like, all right, this is where I'm going to make my last stand. So I just look at Japan. It's like, look, yeah, they're competing on even footing more or less in the United States and Europe and the rest of the world. But when you have a place like Japan with 150 million people and a lot of avid gamers, then as Sony and Nintendo, you're always going to have that like nest egg. You're always going to be able to count on those sales and those numbers. And yeah, it's not as big as the United States and the EU, but it's significant. It's a good portion. So it is a little bit more. So every time that you have like a console launch, it's like, yay, both are rising, both are making all this money. But like the Japanese video game makers make a little bit more, and then over years, a little bit more. It's not the end of the world, but I'm kind of like, there's definitely room for Microsoft to own a little bit more and to still be on even footing with Sony. But I don't know. Like I can also make an argument for the other way where it's like just freaking break up all these companies, and create more competition overall, and that would help the consumer too. But I don't know. It is what it is.
All right. And what do you got for the last bit of news?
So the last thing is so there's a new Near iOS game that's coming out. So there's been some rumors on the Reddit, on the Near Reddit forums, which I frequent. There's been some little hints here and there about a new Near game. We were all hoping that it would be I shouldn't say a Near game. It's a Yoko Taro game, but there's been some hints. We were hoping it would be a Near game, like a full length PS5 type Near game, but doesn't seem like that's the case. Though that is probably coming in the future at some point. So this Yoko Taro game on iOS is going to be the storyline is in a dystopian future where Sega actually did really well. Um, they ended up taking over the world and creating this dystopian future. And then the games that Sega made in this iOS game being made by Yoko Taro, they are anthropomorphized as girls, as anime girls. And it is up to you to fix this dystopia that has been created by Sega. I think it's like mostly like it looks like it's like a chat text based game with you know, anime girls and stuff, sort of like a visual novel of some kind. But anyway, it looks weird. So it definitely looks like Yoko Taro, and I'm eager to play it. But I think it might only be in Japanese. I don't know. But it's only on iOS for now, or it will initially be on iOS, and I will report back whenever that comes out.
Yeah, that sounds like those. I think it's the Hyperdimension and Tunia games where the girls represent the consoles. So it's like you literally have like one of
Yeah.
the girls has like the button configuration as a hairpiece. Um, but yeah, that's a long running franchise, and that's the first thing that came to my mind when you're talking about characters being representation as female characters. So I'm like, all right, so most definitely going to make it big money in Japan for sure.
Yeah.
Uh,
So the game right now is called 404 Game Reset. It's like colon set. So 404 Game Reset, and it's by Sega. So that's something that's happening. What it will mean in the long run, no one can say for sure.
Wait, wasn't this announced before, like a little while ago? Um,
This is
I
9 hours ago, and all these new
all right,
four
because
days ago.
I just remember them doing mentioning
Gamatsu
like
had something a
Virtual
week ago.
Fighter. What was that? Akira from Virtual Fighter or whatever. I remember them showing something about him being. Anyways, all right. Well, yeah, for sure. Keep us posted on that. I mean, it'll be. I would not be surprised if they end up dropping near lore just for the hell of it.
They will.
Just they'll have a character description of something and they'll give you just a little bit more, and then you and your frothing near fans will just love that extra little bit of tidbit.
That's what they do. That's
Uh,
how they bait you into the new game. Like, oh, there's some extra near like stuff in
it's
here.
like that French fry in the bottom of the bag. You're
Yeah.
just like, oh yay,
That's
or
pretty good.
the one onion ring that you get with your French fries. Yeah. Anyways, all right.
That's like, I
Uh,
think that's the most perfect analogy that you've ever said in your entire life. The near lore is like the French fry at the bottom of the bag. That's great. Okay.
uh, okay, so now we're gonna get to the, what we've been watching. All right, so
Watching or playing?
I will. All right, okay. Well, I'm gonna get to. I really wanted to get this topic on, so that's why
Okay.
I wanted to hit this first.
That's fine.
But I'll let you say your piece, and then mine's gonna take a little bit longer. So, so what have you been watching, sir?
So I watched, this movie's been out for a little while. I watched The Glass Onion, which is from Knives Out, the Knives Out 2 or whatever. Um, this has been on Netflix for a few months now, I guess. I watched it, and it's like 2 hours 15 minutes, so it's a kind of a bit of a lot. It's a little bit long of a movie, but it is. If for anybody that doesn't know out there, it is a whodunit mystery set on a private island, and there's a lot of actors, kind of an ensemble cast of actors, most of whom you would recognize, if not think that they're quite famous. Edward Norton, is in it. Daniel Craig, Kate Hudson, Dave Bautista. His first name Dave. Anyway, and some other people
Yeah,
that you,
the
yeah,
Drax. It's Drax. Dave
Drax.
Bautista.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you'd recognize a lot of these people and some faces that I hadn't seen before too as well. It's good. It was very good. A very good mystery in general. Um, so I live in Texas, so we had our annual power outage again. Uh, this the week before last, and so my power went out, and so I had to go over to my parents' house, who still had power, and stayed with them. And so whenever we were all kind of sitting around the TV at night, I was like, "Hey, have you guys seen The Glass Onion?" And so I watched it with them again. And my dad was pretty smart. He actually caught uh, one of the things that they try to kind of fool you on in the movie, and he was like, "Wait, no, that's not how that happened." And I was like, "Dang, he like caught that like straight out," because I didn't whenever I was watching it for the first time. But anyway, uh, it's a good movie, and I think it's better than Knives Out. I think people were saying that they didn't like it as much, but I think it's better than Knives Out. It's definitely a little bit different, but it's fun. Has a fun ending where they wrap up everything pretty nicely. So if you haven't already seen that, which you probably have if you have any interest in it at all by now, but if you haven't seen that, I recommend giving it a little bit of a watch.
Yeah, I couldn't bring myself to watch it. I watched Knives Out and I thought it was just okay. It really wasn't. It's they kind of try to be a clever mystery. It felt more like a flop for trying to be like Clue than it did like an actual real mystery because they don't give you all the clues you need to solve it yourself. They just and then the things they pull out the end were like, and then it's like the later Agatha Christie stuff where it's just like, well, you're making this as a plot twist, but if you didn't give it to me as a potential like thing, like if you a good mystery will let you solve it yourself and a bad mystery, you'll solve it really, really quickly. Um, but if you're done well, you're like you'll keep you guessing, and yeah, maybe you'll get it at the end. But when it comes to be like, and it was really the cameraman because that person was there the entire time, or something like that. It's just like, well, thanks, guys. You got one over on us, by hiding like key facts, and that's where the Agatha Christie like example comes in because I feel like when you in the Knives Out, it was just like, well, yeah, you can follow to a certain extent, but then they started pulling out stuff towards the end, and I'm like, all right, that they literally hinted at nothing of this beforehand, and so it wasn't like you can easily like guess it from point to point. You could just make a wild speculation, but it was yeah, I was disappointed with Knives Out. It's like if you just like a simple popcorn film, then yeah, it was good, but it was like as far as an
Yeah.
actual real mystery, I felt it was lacking in that department. It was entertaining, yes, but I mean, it was like
I think Glass Onion is going to follow along those same lines for you, though. I do think that the mystery is a bit better. There were some things in Knives Out where I thought it should have gone a different way, and it didn't. But at Glass Onion, it's a little bit more a little bit more cut and dry of a mystery. But I do think it's probably misses out and doesn't give you every single thing that you need to solve the mystery before they actually just show it to you. But so it's a little bit more popcorn film like that.
all right. Well, I ended up watching a new Netflix series, and it was called "Make My Day." So it's all right. It's I forget who did the studio on this one, but they did another Netflix animated bit, and so this is a like an 8 episode uh sci-fi story and it's like, you're on a foreign ice planet and mining for new materials. And you're one of the main characters, one of the colonists. He happens to be a prison guard. So it's kind of neat. The one thing I thought was interesting is how the title, they play with the make for make my day, and the E is spun up, and it's a very circular E, so it almost looks like a zero or an O with a line through it, and so it looked like a Mako. And I'm like, okay, so if they're going based off of energy, it's just like, I was like Mako my day, but I'm like that's totally sounds like a Japanese thing. Um, but yeah, the you'll notice right away, right out the gate, that the CG to this, because it's all CG, is looks like a PS1 game. It looks like a special kind of ass. Um, it was just like it was really rough and really jarring. They tried doing some unique things in episode one where they kind of give it that throwback vibe of propaganda on the TV, like as he's doing a prisoner transport, and they're like, everyone here is equal, and we don't care about your past. You can work off your, pretty much work your time off for whatever crime you committed. So you can work in the mines, and it's just like, all right, that they actually animate certain parts of that, and I'm like, oh, that looks nice. Ish, like as far as a throwback, thing to that. I'm like, then they go back to the CG, and it's just like, oof. Um, we're talking about like what it actually reminded me of uh Galarains, which was an old RPG, JRPG, or like a Tekken 1, like some of those cutscenes in there. It's just like very
Oh
blocky,
wow.
very stilted. I mean, the color and the shading, of course, are better, but it's just something about those scenes were just really bad. And uh, I don't know why Netflix really likes to promote really bad CG, and of course, Japan doesn't help themselves with coming out with good, decent CG. It's like it really was jarring.
Yeah. I don't
But
know.
I watched all 8 episodes. Um,
Dude,
why would I do that to myself? Like I mentioned before, anime is real easy to watch while you're doing stuff like cooking. And so I was actually more interested in the story because it was unique enough.
okay.
It kind of had it kind of reminded me a little bit of Lost Planet, because they're on this frozen tundra of a place called Coldfoot. I'm like, wow, that's a really great name for your place. Just name it Coldfoot. Um, and it's just it has enough unique sci-fi elements. It's like the main kid, since he ends up he's a guard, or he ends up having to help with a collapse, the one of the mines. There's an explosion, so he's looking for survivors, and they actually have these little suits, kind of similar to I guess the most recent thing for you would be what Avatar. The Marines would use for lifting boxes and stuff. So they show him jumping out from like, like 20 foot up out of a helicopter, just landing on the ground with,
Dude,
taking the
I've
impact.
I've seen enough anime for enough decades to know what a fucking exosuit is.
I don't know, man. It's just you're a little limited on
Jeez
your scope
Louise,
sometimes.
dude. Come on, man. That's a
I
low
I would go
blow
I would
even
go
by
back with the
you.
original Starship Troopers, but which actually this kind of reminded me of. That's the thing, is this reminded me of some of those old CG shows you'd watch on TV growing up, and it's like Starship Troopers had their own CG one, really rough, like Saturday morning cartoon called Roughnecks, and it was not bad as far as the story goes, but also that was pretty decent CG for the time, which I honestly feel wasn't much worse than what they were showing me in front of my face. Um,
Yeah.
that, or like the old Beast Wars. Beast Wars is really bad compared for nowadays, but that was really
It was
unique for the
amazing
time.
back then. Back when
Yeah.
that came out, it was like, whoa, this is freaking insane, awesome. I was a little kid though, so that's probably why I thought it was cool. But yeah, it's the standard is the bar is a lot higher now.
Yeah, it should be, but unfortunately, it isn't for this animation quality. But the story, like I said, it played like a. I think they wanted to be a video game, because
Mm.
as like essentially they go to find some survivors, they find a a prisoner who's left alive, and then there's essentially a swarm of bug-like creatures. They excavate a dormant hive essentially, and so they're like, yeah, we got to make it back to each level essentially is we got to make it from point A to point B. Each place we're getting to is being swarmed, so it's a constant threat. And they're like, yeah, we have to get to this lift. So they get to you get to the elevator, and they're like, yeah. Next thing you know, like, oh, it doesn't have power. So they quickly do not really a montage, but they just quick time lapse of next thing you know, the prisoner and the guard, like they're loading up the batteries, one battery on each side to power the lift, and then they go like, okay, next scene. And it's just like you didn't have to show us that, but since you did, it makes me really feel like that point in the video game where like I need 2 key cards, something like that. They do a number of things like that it feels very awkward, I guess. But at the
Mm.
same time, I'm like, yeah, this is totally. If I can see it more as a video game adaptation, it kind of makes it better. And they did, but they had some really weird translation choices or like just dialogue choices because, like in the very beginning, the one of the guards, he's a jerk character, and he's just constantly like bagging on like the new guy, which is the main character, and he keeps on calling him virgin because that's a Japanese insult to kind of whip around, being like you're inexperienced, you don't know enough about life. But he says it like multiple times, and I'm like, this doesn't track for the Western audience. This isn't something
Just gets
that
old.
like as a sci-fi author, you're like, and this is what I'm writing down. I'm writing down, it's like this is the insult he has to say. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Um,
There's some
so it was just,
there's some weird stuff like that. Like I was watching Demon Slayer, and there's this one character that they translate what he says as flamboyant. Like he says like you're like he's like insulting people by saying you're the way that you do things is not flamboyant, or you're not flamboyant enough. And then in the later episodes they translate him as saying flashy, and I just like, okay, well, what they mean is stylish, but they need to use all 3 words and maybe more to differentiate what he's trying to say, because it's for whatever reason it's not coming across right in English. So yeah, I've experienced that recently in some stuff myself. It's one of those things, just kind of hard sometimes. Stuff gets just lost in translation.
yeah, for sure. I mean, but essentially, like, yeah, this entire, make my day it was okay. But at the same time, they had to ham it up for like the good guy, like the main character. He's a super nice guy, and like so long as doesn't matter how bad people are, so long as you apologize and you mean it, then it's okay. And like there's you get they end up he ends up rescuing a bunch of people, and it's funny because it's like, oh, like we need to it's like there's an explosion about to happen. Everyone's like, "Get away, stay away from the windows," And they had just hinted before that there is a vehicle on a different floor that may or may not work, but it was there. Someone saw it. The very next scene, as the explosion happening, they're saying, "Stay away from the windows. We got to make sure we don't get caught." You just hyper cuts to them escaping on that vehicle, and I'm like, wait a minute, we missed a large segment of something, you know. But they fast forward a lot, which I'm like, you know what? I understand why they fast forward because you don't need to draw everything out, and it'd just be a long, like once again, a video game. It'd be a long stealth sequence or
Uh,
something where you try not to be seen by the enemy, and it's just like, how much of that do you actually want to watch? Um,
Weird.
but yeah, it was really weird choices on some of those fronts, and like there's this one survivor who's just constantly being like they've shown him a few times, and it's just being a piece of trash altogether. A couple of people are like, we need to murder this person. Like, none of us are going to object, and he's like, no, no, we got to help him. And then lo and behold, that person turns on them at the very last minute, and they're like, no, don't worry, we're still not going to murder you. And then at the very very end, they're like, he happens to save a child's life because no one knows how to do like proper like CPR or something. And so and because so like, oh, see, it all worked out. This guy who literally tried getting you all killed multiple times, he abandoned you, left you for dead. Like, but it's okay. So even he's a redeeming person. Like I'm like, no, dude, it's just it was
Yeah,
so flippin' annoying.
for something like this, I'm kind of like, why did this get made? Like, why did they decide that this story needs to be done in not very good CG? Uh, it's I don't think anyone has ever heard of this series. I don't think it's like, was it an original idea made just for the animation, or
Yeah,
it's
I'm not sure if it's based off a manga or anything like that. I have no idea, but it's just,
so
it is one of their original series, so it's like it's 8 episodes and done.
yeah,
Hopefully. God, I
it's
hope it's done.
it's yeah, it's just why make this? There's plenty of stuff that they make, but that it's like sort of just out of the blue, like, well, this is my idea. But usually when it's like that, it's like, this is my idea, and everyone who's read it, who's, passed around the script, the suits and stuff, go, this is good, this is like good material, so we're going to make it, and we're going to maybe do something a little bit more eccentric with it, but we're going to put some real money behind it and try hard a little bit on it. But this just seems like something I looked at a little bit and I was like, well, the graphics don't seem as bad as, to me, upon first looking at it, as kind of you're making it seem, but they definitely are not good. Um,
You can gloss over it after a while, but that first episode's really jarring, especially when you're seeing
yeah.
some of the other added footage that they're cutting to. Because I don't think you didn't make it like 15 minutes into that first episode, did you?
I only watched like 30 seconds.
Yeah. Okay. Because within the first like 2 minutes, they start showing like the TV
Oh,
and like
maybe
the
it gets
person,
worse.
the
Okay.
woman doing the propaganda, and you're like, wow, that's just rough. Like
Yeah.
they don't even hide that one.
Well, see,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's the thing is like the new Trigun Stampede, it is they're taking an old IP that hasn't been touched in a long time that everybody loves, I guess, and they're doing something different with the animation. They're not just doing a cash grab. They're like, okay, we know you're going to want to watch this because everybody likes Trigun, so we're going to do it in a new CG style that we're going to try hard on. And it does look a little wonky at times, but it looks really good a lot of the other times. So that I'm like, okay, I understand what you're trying to do there. But for this Make My Day, I was like, I don't know what your goal was here.
Yeah, this is done by Five Inc. And they did Exception for Netflix, which I hadn't seen. And that's like the only credit that I've seen to their name is these two things for Netflix. Uh, I feel like it reminds me of the Yule Boll, the guy who made a bunch of video game movies as a tax like front loophole. It kind of reminds me of that situation where like let's make some terrible stuff and we have money to burn or we got to do something weird like that.
Well, I think he was being subsidized by the German government to subsidize German film. I think that's what was going on there. And then I'm sure there's plenty of tech stuff, but yeah, he was. That's what happens when you prop up the arts. Like, you need to let that die. You need to let the arts die, live or die based on its merits. But
All right.
whatever.
So after all that rant, like I said, it was just okay. A lot of stuff I just ended up saying it's just okay. I'm like I didn't like the story was interesting enough, but it was like between the quality of how it looked, and I was just disappointed in that. I mean, you kind of can if you focus enough on the story, you can kind of gloss. You get your eyes adapt to the art style, but then every now and then it does something a little jarring. You're like, oh yeah, that still looks rough.
That sucks.
Um, yeah, it was, and then it ends with everyone being like, "We have a brave new world ahead of us. See, like we can, everything will be great." And I'm like, "Oh God, man, they're gonna make a sequel now. I know it." And it's just like this is gonna be literally right afterwards where things go terribly wrong, like like 48 hours later or something. But I hope they don't make a sequel.
They probably won't. It
the
sounds like I don't think anyone's
so
cared about this enough for them to make a sequel.
Yeah, so I guess that brings up the question I wanted to ask is, which what do you classify as anime? So what is anime in your eyes?
Yeah.
Because I have a rough one with this. I'm like, yeah, I think I'd classify this as anime, but also I don't want to classify it as anime. So I was gonna ask you your opinion on this.
So there was this judge. I think he might have been a Supreme Court judge or something, but he was a judge, and there was a case. I'm going to butcher this whole story. Long story short, there was a case on pornography that came up, and the judge ended up saying, I can't define porn, but I know it when I see it. And I think that anime sort of falls in that category as well. Um, because like there's a desire by a lot of people to want to just say, well, if it's made in Japan and it's in this relative style, then it's anime. But a lot of anime is actually penned and inked and put together in like Korea or in China or in other countries, um, and also done by a lot of non-Japanese people. Um, and so I think you're going to talk probably about the Legend of Korra a little bit, so maybe I'll leave that alone. But I think to me, anime is more than anything, it is a style. And it can be made anywhere by anyone, but it is a particular style with sort of, I don't want to say broad, I don't want to say narrow boundaries, but it is ultimately an anime style, and that's pretty much the only place that I can like draw a line around it.
Yeah, it's for me, I think it's, you kind of have to be where is it a glass half full or half empty? It depends on where you started. So in Japan, everything's classified as anything animated, any cartoon, because it's really jarring when you hear them talk about The Simpsons anime, and you're like, wait, what? You're like, oh, that's right,
It's
yeah,
true, yeah.
you would classify that as anime. But from the Western outlook, coming from the history of like Japanimation and
Yeah.
it's just like what classifies, you can ask yourself that with like what's a JRPG now, compared to what it is back then or
Yeah.
something, so it's when it comes to anime, yeah, I think a lot of it does have to do with the style and what you're trying to invoke. I mean, now if for example, if a Japanese studio came out with something really weird or really unique, uh, something like what is it, the rotoscoping in Scanner Darkly, if they did like an entire thing like that, Scanner Darkly by no means is a anime, but it is all animated, and it's so I would not call like even if a Japanese studio came out with that, I don't think I would necessarily call that anime. Um, Now, when it comes to like modern studios, like you mentioning Korra, but like the last Avatar, the Last Airbender slash Netflix's Voltron, it's like those are very much inspired by anime. It's most I find a lot of those kids cartoons, are starting to get that, that style, the character design, eyes, shading, kind of the action scenes themselves. Uh, I feel like that's more and more as kids have grown up with anime being around more, like that influences their art style. So there is a blurrier line than what it used to be, and
Yeah. Yeah. You bring up a really good point there about, you know, Simpsons being anime in Japan. And I think it's because Japan has never asked for Western animation in any serious kind of way. They've never had a demand for Western animation, whereas the West has had a demand for Japanese animation for going on decades now. Um, so like if they did start to go like, hey, we really like Rick and Morty, and I mean really. the West would have to start putting out a lot more different types of animation as well. But if they did start to ask for that, and that kind of made its own invasion, airing on TV over in Japan a lot more, then yeah, you might see something along the lines of a Western, like they would probably name it something that is different from, anime, just to say this is, still a cartoon, but it's in the Western style, the way that we have, co-opted anime. It doesn't mean animation. It means cartoons drawn in the Japanese style, the traditional, I guess, Japanese style now. So yeah, it's one of those weird cultural things. They just haven't really had the demand for it. So I would like to see a inverted world where that happened. That'd be a fun story to explore.
I don't know, man. That sounds terrifying. The invasion of like Family Guy art style meets like The Simpsons, and the South Park is taking over everywhere.
like
It's just it would
like
be
Family Guy art style, but they like hunt for like the super sword or whatever, like Family Guy Gundam or something. That would be that. Now I'm very intrigued.
all right. But yeah, so it's just it kind of is a state of mind. It's what you can classify. I feel like you can classify a lot of Western, new Western cartoons as anime, and there's no one should really take much offense. And if you do, well, that's for you. I mean, that's if you want to die on that hill, that's fine. But I honestly think it's not worth too much fighting over. When it comes to like these CG things, I'm like, well, these characters are obviously modeled after um, after anime characters. One of the things I forgot to mention though is in Make My Day, they have a robot companion, and the designer of the robot is actually someone famous. And I can't remember his name now, but he's the same guy who did like the robot design for like Escaflowne and some stuff, other ones. And it's just like, I'm like, okay, well, that's cool. I mean, it's just a companion. Kind of reminds you of the little Metal Gear from was that Metal Gear 4, or like Snatchers. But this one's a bit more tanky. It's like it's a much bigger size, but it's just that they gave it a personality. They gave it a name, and it's a slight AI, so it responds to when they call them, and it's just like, yeah, it's a cute companion character that fights with them. Um, they
Okay.
call it Casper. Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know. It was a weird naming choice. I'm like, you went with Casper. Okay. Was not expecting that. But yeah, it's I don't know. This I don't know. I just really have a problem with Japanese CG. A lot of anime do it. There's some anime that does it right, but a lot of them do it wrong. Or when they do it with people movement, like it's so stilted, and it just doesn't have enough frames, so it looks very cheap. If they
Yeah.
had enough, if they had enough key animations in it, it'd be more, or, if it was more smooth, then you'd be like, all right, that's not a problem. And like you were mentioning, Trigun is doing it very well, especially in comparison to something like this. Just like, wow, this is like a masterclass compared to, at least that's the way I feel.
Yeah, and Trigun is doing it better, but like I kind of wonder if it's like if it's because American CG animation animators, they've had longer with it. They've cared about it for a lot longer with Pixar and all that stuff. But I wonder if they looked at it and were like, okay, this is still animation, but because it is in 3D, we now have to look at it more like, more realistic. Like we have to figure out how it works, um, in how it pertains to the real world more than animation. Whereas maybe Japanese animators are like, okay, this is animation, so we're going to try to make it work like anime. And it's like, well, it's not 2D anymore. And it's not, you can't stretch and bend stuff quite as much, because the human brain is trying to look at it in 3 dimensions, and it doesn't jive. the same way. So I just wonder if maybe that's the thing. But anyway, we could probably opine on it
Yeah,
for a lot.
yeah, I feel like it's more of a thing on budget. It's like, yeah,
It
we
could
could
be,
do it for
yeah.
cheaper. Let's instead of having to animate from point A to point B, you can just literally CG map it and like, yeah, let the computer do it itself, and that's what makes it look really awkward. And that's my opinion, anyways. Because if they had, I feel like if they had better budgets, they would start to put more quality in. But I feel it's like that's the best corner cutting,
It is
like we
expensive.
need 50 soldiers in the background, and they're all gonna run like robots and like run really high armed up as they're going through. And I'm like, wow, that's those soldiers really know how to march there,
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, that's anyways. All right. Thanks for answering that question. Now we're gonna go back to what have you been playing? Because, like I said, I had to get that off my chest. I was like, it was just bugged the crap out of me. So thanks for humoring me.
No, that's
So
good. It's good to move up something important like that. Um, yeah, I've been playing Signalis. This game is on, I think, a bunch of systems right now. I've been playing it on Game Pass, which I think it fits that. If it did not end up coming to Game Pass, though, I probably would have bought it um, because it's a very cool looking game. It is a isometric, so like top down sort of, but an isometric third person um, horror game in the same sort of vein as maybe like old Resident Evil, but the storyline has to do with like androids crashed on a planet, um, cold outside, you don't have a memory, and you're wandering around this facility trying to figure out what happened and how to get off or survive. Um, and it is probably the most interesting thing about it on its face is that it is in made in I guess you'd probably call them closer to PS2, but they're like PS2 style graphics, cleaned up a bit, made to look nicer for a 1080p screen, but they are emulating that old style of graphics. And they're doing it very, very well. It is a striking looking game. They understand how those old graphics work best and sort of how creepy they were. Like I've been seeing a lot of videos about this on YouTube in general about how PS1 and PS2 era games, because of the low poly aspect, they had an extra creep factor that seems to have been lost um, in today's games, even in today's like high tech horror games. They're just there's something unsettling about those Silent Hill and Resident Evil games. So anyway, this game is
yeah, it's what's not seen. It's what you can't make out. When you have more, you had the fog in Silent Hill, but also you couldn't see a proper face. You can it's when you see it's when you see the monster in a horror film, right? It's
yeah
more creepy when you only see a glimpse of the monster, but when you see the full thing out, like, oh, that's a rubber suit. So yeah, the more detail you give it, unless if you have a like an exquisite piece of art asset, something like you get from a From Software game, it's just like it's kind of hard to have that with a low or so simple, so if you dumb it down to this, that makes more sense. Yeah, the simple graphics can make it way more scary
yeah
as far as your imagination will fill in the blanks.
yeah, it really can. And the sound quality on this game is really good too. Like they have good music, but they have very very minimal music, if really any, a lot of the time. And they make a lot of really creepy sounds and stuff in the game, that it's just straight away, even like loading the game or saving the game, it puts this like creepy siren out. And it's unsettling. It's they've the people that made this game, I believe it's made by Humble Bundle games. They did a really good job, and it is definitely a good throwback. I only put about 3 hours into it, um, but I don't know how much more I'm going to actually gonna get to play. But it's very well made. I would like to see another one from these games or from this game maker, but it's just really good overall. It is in a bit of an anime style, which is sort of weird to say that doesn't become a factor very much, except for in some of the like cut scenes, I guess. And the puzzles are good and stuff like that. It's just if you even if you're not really into horror games, I would say play the first half hour or so, um, just to get the aesthetic, uh, because it is worth seeing at least on that point.
Oh, that's cool, man. Yeah, I've had it downloaded for like the last month and a half, 2 months on my PC, but I just haven't gotten around to it. So, yeah, I'm glad you actually got around to looking at it. And uh, yeah, the art style does look neat. Does look neat. It kind of reminds me of a little bit of like the like reminiscent of like Ghost in the Shell or something like that. The way they tried making her look. Um, I don't know,
Yeah,
just something about the art. Yeah, but that's I would like to say I'd get to it, but honestly, like I said, it's been on my computer for months. Haven't touched it. I probably won't get around to it anytime soon.
yeah.
So
That's how it goes sometimes.
yep. Well, I've been since I had recently got the Xbox, Series X. Yeah, I've decided to swing on by my local library and see what they had. So they had Tiny Tina's Wonderland. That one is, split screen multiplayer. So I was like, awesome. I can go ahead and actually, if we get some time, actually play some games with my wife. And sure enough, that's what we've been able to do. So if you don't know Tiny Tina's Wonderland, it's the uh, Borderlands spinoff where it's D&D themed. So you get classes, swords, you get other melee spells and stuff, and then you get guns. You get crossbows and actual like firearms later. But if you want to build a melee character, you most definitely can. Two of the main voices in the game are Andy Samberg and Wanda Sykes.
Wow,
So was not expecting those,
love
but
her
yeah, they're
voice.
there.
Uh,
So it's pretty funny. The game you're playing is not D&D, but it's bunkers and badasses. And
yeah.
yeah, it's entertaining. I'm enjoying it. I mean, I know people either love or hate Borderlands games, and I think it depends on who you play with. Because if you play with someone you play with the wrong group of people, everyone's just darting ahead, skipping the story, trying to just loot everything, and you're like, it just becomes uh, kind of like an old Gauntlet, like the OG Gauntlet style game
Oh
where everyone's
yeah.
just trying to grab food.
Dang, I
So
forgot
it's just
about
like,
that game.
so it reminds me of something like that when you're playing with the wrong group. But when you're playing with the right group and you take your time and you're actually, messing around, my wife and I like to explore, so we get we check for all the different corners, and we're like, oh yeah, check this out, we found this, and we're willing to like split loot and stuff like that, so it makes it a lot easier.
It's more of a
Though
chill game that way.
they do have two different option settings. One is was it co-opetition or something like that. So and the other one's so instead of having and then the cooperation, yeah. So it's or they have it so you can set up where the multiplayer people everyone gets their own loot. Yeah, it won't be the same, so it's still randomized. But that way, when you open up a treasure chest, you don't have to actually, you'll have double the loot essentially, uh, or you'll have it where the traditional style where one person opens the chest first, they can hog it all for themselves. So uh, yeah, they made it a little more friendly, user friendly that way, and they have I think it was like 6 to 8 classes. I think six at least. Um, and some of the classes are unique in the Borderlands fashion. They have a they have a berserker, which is essentially a melee focused you know berserker with a cold affinity. So hence the BRR berserker. And I'm
Mhm.
like, all right, that was clever. Uh, they have some really unique builds. We haven't gotten to we've only played for like maybe 2 hours. We did some side stuff, and it's like, but we haven't even gotten the chance to multi-class yet. So there's multi-class in this. I'm like, all right, that's cool. we're enjoying it so far, and I'm actually pleased with it. I mean, uh, it looks good. It's funny. I haven't played Borderlands 3 or the Handsome Jack collection, so I stopped with Borderlands 2. But I've also played with a really bad group of people with Borderlands 2 to
Uh,
the point where like, okay, guys, um, yeah, if we can't work together, then yeah,
we'll just have to do something
uh,
different.
see
Yeah.
you never, right? Yeah.
Yeah. That's too bad.
So, yeah. Outside of that, then I also played a board game. It's called Exit the Game, and this scenario was the abandoned cabin.
Okay.
So these are little, essentially, a quick, simple story game in a box, in a very tiny box, and it's meant to be like a legacy style game, which means that you are meant to play it once, and you're meant to alter the items. Whether it's to tear them up, write on them. So it's meant to be destroyed after the one use. But in a game like this, once it's an escape room. These are escape room style games. So the whole point of it is, in this scenario, is we're in an abandoned cabin, and next morning you wake up, you go there to take shelter from a storm, and you're locked in it. So all you find is a handbook and a decoder kind of device on the side, with it's a couple layer rings, and it has like icons and numbers. So you're like, okay, so based off the handbook, you have a couple decks of cards. One deck is just hints for all the puzzles. So just like if you were in a real escape room and you needed a hint, you can flag someone for a hint. Well, they'll give you two hints and then the solution to whatever problem you have. Then they have a bunch of clues and some solutions. And so depending based off the handbook, you're going through the handbook and you're finding your first, you know, you're reading it carefully, trying to find your first clue, and then you'll just, you're like, okay, well, here's some hints. I can try to decipher it with the decoder, and based off that, it'll tell me to draw whatever card. And so, based off that card, it'll either uh, give me some other puzzle clues to unlock from the other deck, or it'll then lead me to go draw another card. And then you see, like, if you're guessing incorrectly, it'll be like, nope, this is a dead card. It's like there's not, you didn't get it correct. Or it'll be like, oh, now here you are, once again, draw a different card from the other pile, and it's like, all right, here's the new clues you have, here's some extra story lore or whatever. And yeah, it's, you can probably do it between like 1 to 2 hours. It's a I think, 4 player game, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. A buddy of mine bought it for us, just as a thank you gift, essentially. And we're like, yeah, this is. I think they go for like 15-20 bucks, so they're pretty cheap, and especially when you compare it to going to an actual escape room. And if you're going with multiple people, that's like usually anywhere from 20 to like 50 bucks a person,
Yeah.
depending on how, and that's, they can last up to a couple hours as well. So yeah, I think it was totally worth the little experience, like the time. And we enjoyed sitting around playing this game, having a couple drinks. And but they have a bunch of scenarios, just literally, they have quite an extensive collection. I was told to be careful of the later series because I guess the writers changed. And
Oh.
so because the writers changed, the puzzles became a little more brute forced. Like, so the handful of games, there's like a secret lab, there's a pharaoh's tomb, there's also there's like a return to there's actually a sequel to the abandoned cabin. uh, but I guess those ones you can solve with actual logic, and later on some of them you feel like you're just having to uh, like I said, brute force your way, from what I was told. So I'm like, okay, well, so just forewarning, just make sure. But they actually sell like the first three as a set: the Pharaoh's Tomb, um, Science Lab, and Abandoned Cabin, for like, I think it was like 35 bucks off of Amazon or something like that. So I was like, oh, that's pretty nice, for that little, for that experience. Or like, for 40 bucks or something like that, to get uh, a handful of hours, and you can get a good group. So I'm already looking at a couple of friends coming over and us picking up one of the other packs just to play. So yeah, I have a couple more board games lined up that I'll probably end up talking about next time around. Just kind of fell into a weird situation where I came across these new board games. So I was just like, all right, it's been forever since we got a chance to play board games. Those are also a little easier to pick up and put down, especially with the children at night, because if they wake up, well, we can just leave it in the spare room at that table, and then come back to it the next day if we had to. So that's kind of our game plan on that. It's that's the nice thing about the new consoles too is you can also suspend a lot easier than
It is.
so
Yeah, that is a really cool thing about those. But yeah, that's cool, man. I like board games. But man, it's hard to fit more than the ones I have already in my life, into my life. So, it's always good to hear about.
it's getting the people you need. That's the problem.
That
Like trying
is,
to
yeah,
coordinate everyone to take some time off and then, oh yeah, let me explain to you the rules to this game. I know you guys just got here. Now listen to me talk for another 30 minutes about the how you should play this game.
yeah. It's always tough. Like the worst part of any board game is learning it. But once you got it learned, man, there's some fun stuff that you can do. It's almost like the first game is sort of just throwaway. You have to just like, well, I'm going to sink 2 hours, 3 hours into this game, and then not really and have some fun, sure, but the real fun is second, third, fourth, 10th playthrough.
Yeah, and then you have to, like, it'll make or break friendships, that's for sure, depending on the type of game. I'm very much a fan of cooperative gameplay. So that way, no matter what, you're all still, if win or lose, you at least tried it as a team. Um, while when you play a game like Risk is banned in my in-laws' house. They do not allow Risk to be played because apparently they had some very heated moments when they back in their college days, and I'm like, we need to all play Risk now, guys. I don't care. And they're like, no, this is a banned game from this house.
Yeah,
So
Risk has it's I don't know, like Risk has a lot of there's a lot of house rules that get implied or get input, and there's a lot of like I realized that I wasn't playing Risk like right at all. And then there's like there's army limits that you can put on countries and stuff. The game is if you play the game as is, as most games are, if you just play the game as is, it will finish in the proper amount of time. But yeah, people also do shitty things sometimes, and you just find out who somebody really is, and you're like, man,
yeah, so you feel that way in any game where someone can attack you at any moment. You're like, wait, I thought we were friends.
dude, I have legitimately heard. Um, there was a NPR radio program where they did a little bit of a little episode on diplomacy, and diplomacy is a game that you should never play, because the things I'm sure people can handle it or whatever, but the stories they were pulling out were really horrible. Like people were using um, real world incentives to force people to do certain things in the game, and it was pretty messed up. So I was like, okay, never play diplomacy, never check. Okay.
Uh, all right. Well, on
Anyway,
that note, yes, diplomacy. Never, no one ever should ever do diplomacy. It just period, full stop, all across the world. You heard it from Nick first. Uh, just take that out of context and use that as the snippet.
I might. You
Uh,
never know.
well, thank you guys for sticking with us. This has been another Dead Pixel, episode 37. And until next time, y'all take it easy.
All right. Bye.